Now, I could tell you about my whole life, but it doesn't matter right now because that's too long to talk about. But I want to talk about one of many, many miracles that I've had. And if you came to the other meeting a few weeks ago, you heard about this, but you're going to hear about it again because it's spectacular. And that is that we have a ranch in Texas. I have a horse. I'll give you a little background on the horse. Horse has 4 legs. No, this horse, I'm going to tell you something about a horse. You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be like all those guys on TV, all those Western heroes that you see on television and in the movies. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand. There's a lot of those reruns on TV nowadays. I wanted to be like all those guys. In fact, when I was playing out in the yard, I was all those guys. And I was Zorro too, and I was Superman. I was every one of those guys. Until my mother called me, and then all of a sudden I wasn't one of those guys, but I was those guys. Anyway, so, you know, I wanted to have a horse like Roy Rogers. I wanted to be like Roy Rogers. And he had a horse. And his horse was Trigger. Anybody remember the Golden Palomino Trigger? Of course you do. But I didn't want to name my horse Trigger. Someday I'll have a horse like that. I prayed for a horse like that, and one day I would have a horse like that because God would give me a horse like that. But I didn't want to name him Trigger. So what can I name him? Well, Roy Rogers' son is named Dusty. You know, he's called Dusty. So I figured I'll name the horse Dusty. Well, one day we moved to Texas, and we have... I think it was even before we had the ranch. We got the horse. She picked out this horse for me. Hey, this is some guy selling a Golden Palomino horse, right? So we went to go see this horse. And what's his name? Dusty. Okay. You know, Roy Rogers' horse used to do, you remember, one of the things that Trigger used to do is he would pray, and he would get down like this and pray. I'm ready to leave when we go to check out the horse. And you know what? They said, oh, we want to show you something he does. You know what he did? He went down here and prayed. Like, oh man, that's the horse. What a beautiful horse. So I used to take this horse out and ride him in the evening. But one day I took him out, and for some reason he bucked. Now, that does happen to people. You get bucked off a horse. Some people say, if you never got throwed, you never rode. It does happen. And this was in August. And now I've got you all convinced that in August it can be 114 degrees out, can't it? Because it's over 100 degrees this week. So, you know what the ground is like when it's that hot? It's as hard as a rock. And I flew through the air and landed and couldn't move and was in tremendous pain, and my left leg wasn't working, and I was in the greatest pain I ever had in my life. You know, I've had corneal abrasions, I've had diverticulitis and had a colon resection, 7-hour operation. Some people say that's the most painful thing. I had a kidney stone. Some people say that's the most painful thing. No, the most painful thing is when you fall on the hard ground and you break your pelvis in 5 places. You kind of like blow out a hole through part of it. You have 2 cracked vertebrae in your lower back, your left leg doesn't work, and you have internal bleeding. That's more painful than all the others, and that's what happened to me. I laid on that ground calling for help. I didn't have a cell phone with me. My wife was in the house with the air conditioning going, and I laid out there calling for help and calling for help and calling for help, and nobody was coming to help me. Towards the end, the time the sun came down, there was a family that was riding around looking for the man who was calling for help. I don't always give all the details. People tell me I should write a book, but I'm going to throw this in tonight. This really did happen. When this family came over to help me, the wife went after Dusty. He was in the woods eating leaves off the tree. He didn't care about throwing me. And the brother and the father decided to go up to the house and tell my wife. So the little blonde girl was there. I'm in tremendous pain, and I look up, and there's this little girl, and I said, little girl, do you pray? And she said, yes. I said, pray for me right now. And I went back looking down. I was in so much pain. And then I look up, and I see this silhouette, more or less, you know, from the side of this little girl with wavy hair, with her hands like this, down on her knees, just like a little angel type thing, you know. I said, I got to remember that when I get well, because that was just amazing. So it really touched me. So anyway, I'm going to cut all this down. Man, every movement, I was screaming out to Jesus. And I ended up in the emergency room in Decatur. yeah, the ICU or whatever it is down there in Methodist Hospital in Fort Worth, where they weren't all that wonderful. And then they put me over there in South Lake in one of these, places where they put people who have problems. Everybody in there was like in their 90s except one guy, besides me. They were all up in there. They were all, very, very, very elderly people with all kinds of aches and pains and problems. And I laid on my back for 5 weeks. Laid on my back for 5 weeks with this pain. I could not move. And man, I got to tell you, that's just terrible. This is horrible to have that happen to you. A lot of miracles happened along the way. One was all of the ladies that worked there were all like some of the ladies that come here. They were from Africa, and they all believed in Jesus. And one time when my wife Grace came to visit me, she went around and got every one of those ladies to leave their stations where they're supposed to be working and to come in the room and pray for me. And those ladies prayed in tongues, and they weren't shy about it. And I'm laying in bed, and all these women all of a sudden are, amen, hallelujah, thank you. Yeah, all these ladies praying for me. It was great. Anyway, they made our bedroom like the hospital room. They brought in a hospital bed, and they said, now look, see, I couldn't sit because I was all broken up. Even after 5 weeks, they said it takes about a year before you see what you got left. You don't know, are you gonna limp? Are you never gonna be able to walk again? We don't know. But, so I wasn't ready for the wheelchair yet. So you go from wheelchair to walker to cane, all along you have therapy, and then you see what you're left with after about a year. Okay, so isn't that a nightmare?
Yes, it is.
But we have Jesus.
Amen.
Had Jesus for a long time. That's why you ought to get to know Jesus now. Today is the day to get saved. Don't wait till something bad happens. Already get to know Jesus, so when it happens, you don't have to go, now what am I supposed to believe? Who's supposed to pray for me? What do I do? No, if you already know Jesus, then he's on. You already know what you believe. You have faith. I mean, we never said anything about, oh, this could be so terrible. Never. No, we don't believe that. We believe in what the Bible says. Anyway, so they said to me, look, you can take the walker and you can hop on your right leg the 3 or 4 steps it takes to go to the bathroom from your bed. That way you can start going to the bathroom again. Oh, thank God. Isn't that wonderful? So what I did was, I wanted eventually to go out to that spot where I hit the ground. And I wanted to thank God that I was still alive. Because only I know what it's like to lay out there all day in that heat and be thinking, I could die right now. And this could be it. This could be how I die. Just me out here screaming for help. Anyway, so I wanted to go to that spot and I wanted to thank God. So this time I took the cell phone. It was 9.5 weeks after I had initially gotten hurt. We were home. She was cleaning the house and I took the walker. Now when you've been laying in bed for 9.5 weeks, just to go like that wears you out. To hop 3 or 4 steps is a big deal. To go all the way out to that spot where I got hurt, that's a big deal. But I made it out there. And I had this walker, see, and I could only hop on this leg. Man, it took a lot out of me. It was a hot day, not as hot as it was back in August. But this leg didn't work from here on down. This leg just drooped. So I'm a man. Anybody, you women know anything about men? I was ready to, you're not married yet? You are married? Okay, you know about men. I was ready to make my speech to God. I was ready to go. I had it all set, And I said, Lord, now I know the voice of God because I've been with God for 40 years or something. So I heard God say on the inside of me, but very strongly, now take the walker and walk.
Amen.
And I know God's voice. Boy, was that his voice. And it felt as if somebody lifted up my forearms underneath. I'm telling you the truth. At the same time, it felt like the presence of God came down like a blanket, and I could tell this is just on our property. Isn't that something? But I could tell this presence of God just came down in a big way. It's on our property. Now, my wife could tell you, and anybody that knows me can tell you, that I'm not one of these crazy Jesus people. I felt Jesus. I asked Jesus yesterday, should I buy cornflakes or Rice Krispies? And he told me, I'm not like that. Those people are nuts. Don't listen to them. They're crazy. Listen, I've got degrees. I have a bachelor's in biblical studies and a master's in divinity and religion. We had a Bible school for 17 years, hundreds and hundreds of graduates. We are very well rooted in the Word of God. We teach it on a university level. I know biblical scholars. Probably one of them's watching right now. Roy. He's very famous. Roy's father was very, very famous on TVN all the time. Remember the Blizzard family and all that? Okay. Roy's in Texas. I had to tell people there's a blizzard in Central Texas. That's where Roy lives. Roy Blizzard. Anyway. But I felt the presence of God, and I knew it was God. And I also knew that if I start thinking, being a man, if I start analyzing this and start thinking, I'm going to block it from happening. So I don't know if any of you believe in glossolalia, speaking in tongues, praying in the Spirit. Raise your hand if you do. The Full Gospel Businessmen Fellowship International does believe in that. Yes, it does. Okay, so what happened was I said I got to pray in tongues, because if I start thinking, I will analyze this being a man and I'll block it from happening. So I just started praying in tongues and I started walking. Now, we have a donkey, his name is Jellybean. We didn't name Jellybean, he came with the name Jellybean. And he was way, way, way in the back in a fenced-in, area, right? And we have different pens, they're big, call it a pen. And he was in that one by himself, and he looked at me and he was frozen. And I thought, wow, he feels it too. Because he just stared at me, man. He wasn't sleeping. I know when they're sleeping. He was staring. He was frozen. So I just started walking, and I walked, and I walked, and I walked all the way down there with this thing up. And then I walked all the way back. And then I walked through the barn. I walked through the tack room. I walked through a recording studio. I walked into our office. I usually don't tell people this. And I sat down the walker. Now, we have visions and dreams, and they're from God, and they're always 100% accurate, and they are amazing things that he shows us. They're 100% accurate. Now, I don't usually tell people this part of the testimony, but I set the walker down, and God gave me several visions right there. And he told me, don't tell anybody this. Don't tell anybody that. I'm just showing this to you. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Ever have anything like this happen to you if you're really walking in the Holy Ghost? You will see, if you really, really want to see these things and hear these things from God, it's no picnic, because there are things going on in the spirit realm, and some of them are very bad and terrible, and others are beautiful. But we always see God get the victory, and he always gives you the peace. And when it comes to his people, it's like the book of Acts with the churches and the candles, and he never gives up on anybody. He might say, I have this problem here, but then he tells you what to do. See, it's always good when you're saved and God's speaking to you. So anyway, so I had those visions, and then when he was through, I walked out. And I walked, and she had come from cleaning the house and sat down by the pool. And I looked over, and I didn't say, you're not going to believe this. I said, Grace, you are going to believe what just happened to me. And she said, what? And I said, I can walk. And she said, let me see. And I walked. And I've been walking ever since. Amen. Just like you see here. And I said to her, tonight, let's get in the car, let's go somewhere. She said, you got to be kidding. No, I can't wait to drive. She says, you're going to drive? Sure, I got my miracle. I was instantaneously like the way I am now. In fact, when I went back to see the unbelieving doctor at 11 weeks, she was praying and believing that at 11 weeks I would go back and I would walk in and walk out, which is quite an amazing thing. That's exactly what happened. The other times I went to see the specialist, it was a big deal. Special van, me in a wheelchair tied down, all this stuff underneath me to cushion my bottom, just all this big deal. Every bump in the road hurt. It was a big, big trip. I couldn't wear like regular clothes because I couldn't move and stuff. Here I was just a couple weeks later, and I walked in, all just like this. Well, originally when we went to see the doctor, she said, is there any way that we can expedite this healing? Like praying to the Lord and stuff. And he goes, yeah, you pray to your God like that. So when we went back to see him, he didn't say, whoopee, I believe in Jesus. I think I'm going to, say Jesus did this. No physician is ever going to say, Jesus Christ did, because the people that don't believe will come after him. He'll lose his license. He'll lose his marriage. He'll be disgraced. You think of what will happen if a doctor came out and started saying Jesus does miracles, and he'd be ruined. Think about the huge loans they have to pay for their student loans. These guys, they're really, I know what you're saying. They ought to say Jesus did it if Jesus did it, but let me tell you, most of them aren't thinking that way. They're thinking a very worldly way. Amen. They're thinking they got to pay for the office. I got to pay for this. I got to pay the insurance. That's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about Jesus. So anyway, went back to see him. He walks in. I'm looking at the old X-ray. He says, sit down. I said, hey, I'm walking. He said, sit down. But anyway, when he was through asking me questions, here's what he said. This is exactly what he said. No wheelchair, no walker, no cane. Just keep walking. Just keep doing what you're doing. And that's what I did. I went to see him one other time to look at the X-ray that I had that time. The 9.5-week X-ray, you see. The 11-week X-ray, 11 weeks after I got hurt. And he showed me the X-ray. He was very happy because there were all these lines going through the X-ray. And all those lines it looked like a road map. All those lines were all the cracks that I had, right? And they were all, he said, you notice how white those lines are? Yeah. He said, that's because the density of the bone that healed up is stronger than the density of the bone all around it. Wow, isn't that something? That's exactly what happened. So, as people visited us the next few days, they would walk in the house, and instead of knowing that I was laying in bed, and they'd see me walking around and doing things, and they would just be dumbfounded. Yeah, this is the kind of, we've had many miracles. That's a big one. But I want to tell you, when you need God, he's there. Amen. He does miracles. He does miraculous things. We don't follow him because of that. We want to be saved, but we need to follow him because he knows what's right. He knows what's better for us than what we know. It's so much better to have his wisdom and guidance in our lives. The people in the world that aren't following the Lord, they are so messed up. Have you ever looked at them and seen the crazy decisions that they make, the nutty things that they do? People have problems, so what do? They start taking drugs and alcohol. They cut themselves off from everybody. They do like everything just the opposite of what you should do if you have a problem. It's just a bit, follow Jesus. He's always faithful. He never doesn't lets anybody down. And he just blesses people's life. And having said that, now here comes the epic of Pastor Grace's life.